Anyone else to represent the applicant?
Uh,
Carol Sable case, is it
I
automatically
think we're,
denied, or is it?
no, I think we're
They're not
obligated
going
to
to
still, I mean, it's on our agenda, I think we're obligated to still entertain the case.
Oh, that clock's fast.
No,
Not
not
much,
that
I've got
long.
6:59.
I spilled some water on it in
Yeah,
the
I've got
car
69.
just before I walked up, but.
Adam,
Sorry, guys.
can I just ask
You
you a
like
quick
grid
question?
Oh,
Ken just brought
That
up a
works.
good point.
I just,
If the applicant, if an applicant does not attend, and essentially there's no other representative here for that case, if there's no request to table or remove from the case, since it's on the agenda, we're still obligated to have the conversation, are we not?
Yes, I think you can choose to do what you want, but you should still at least open the agenda.
Okay, all right,
Recognize that there isn't an applicant
yeah, okay,
talk,
that's what I,
see if you want to
what I
have a
thought.
discussion.
yeah, okay. That's what I thought.
I agree, and then you can also post.
Are you our counsel today?
I am.
Hi, how are you? I am so sorry.
No, that's just fine, but I completely agree. I mean, it's within your discretion, you can postpone and you can choose, but you should.
Yeah, thank you, that's what I thought. And obviously, I don't think we would make a decision without the applicant present. I don't know, maybe we would. Did the township lose power anywhere that anybody's aware of? How about out by you? No? How about you?
No, I don't think it
Not
was.
us.
We got some decent rain, but nothing
Yeah.
crazy.
All right. Well, so you did say Danielle is coming, yes?
yeah, I talked to her.
Okay.
Must be here.
Aha.
it's just turned on. It's, I need a new phone. This phone, it's just, my husband's like, as soon as
Danielle, how are you?
it'll just turn off, and then I can't. My problem. Just- It's a
Take your time.
Samsung Motorola, I think.
Extra brother.
I bought it used, so I don't even know how old it is.
I had a Samsung that I was hanging on to forever, and I finally just had to switch because it just wouldn't function.
What if I want an iPhone?
Oh, I can't stand iPhones.
Oh,
But there's a couple different decent Samsungs,
yeah,
like the newer generation ones.
I'm gonna have to look into it, cause this, like I said, I bought it used, but it's been about 4 or 5 years.
And let me know when you're ready.
Oh,
I'm ready.
Hi, how are you? Nice to see you.
You too.
Thank you.
Everyone's having a good summer.
Yeah.
She just declared it over, so.
Oh,
Okay,
no.
table ready?
2 more months.
We are ready. We're good? Thank you. Well, good evening. Welcome to the Harrison Township Planning Commission meeting.
The only one here.
Yeah, you are. Go ahead, no, please have a seat. Have a seat.
Oh, I have a,
Today is Thursday, August 17th, 2023. Please call the meeting to order.
Member Batcha?
Present?
Member Devlin?
I'm sorry, roll call.
Present. Member Duncan?
Present?
Member Mulder?
Present.
Tamanello, excused. Oparka, here. Chair Murray.
Present? Thank you. May I have approval of the agenda as presented, please?
So moved.
Second?
Motion to approve, seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
I'm sorry, who supported? Thank you.
Sorry, I usually say. May I have approval of the minutes from our May 18th, 2023 meeting? That was the last time we were together.
So moved.
Support.
Motion to approve and support. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay. Our first hearing this evening, please.
Case number 19-23-CR, Boattown Marina, 30301 South River.
Hi. How are you?
good, how are you?
Good. Summer going well?
Oh, yeah,
Good.
yeah.
Nice and busy out there?
Yeah, it's, well, with the weather has a lot to slow down a little bit,
Yeah,
but,
well, it's been a little wet.
yeah, a little bit.
Okay, so you are here before us for a compliance review
Okay.
for the temporary seasonal approval for a floating office for boat rentals and a porta-john on the property.
Yes,
Okay, have you received, this, have you received the letter from the planner and the fire chief and all the other information relative to your?
No, I never got
compliance
the fire chief.
review? Okay.
I don't believe he did one.
Yeah, he did not have a letter for this case, the fire chief.
I received 2 letters from him.
Yeah, I said no issues.
Yeah, no issues, yeah,
There's one from Selfridge, a letter.
yeah.
I think first.
Sir, could you state your name?
Yeah.
It's Joseph Savaggio.
The letter from our fire marshal, Mr. Shackett, indicates, it's a letter dated August 15th, and it's very short, so I'll just read the important part. The Fire Prevention Division has conducted a recent inspection of the property. It was found that you only had 2 minor violations that can be enforced through the inspection process. At the time of inspection, there was no obstruction to access for fire hydrants, and the only violations that were found were the fire extinguishers need to be placed on the docks and submittal to the right to know form to the fire department. So you have fire extinguishers, but they're not on the docks?
Yeah, they're in the boats. They're all, every
all
boat
in
has a
boats?
fire extinguisher on.
Okay, they have to be on, you also have to have fire I don't think you have to have both, but you have to have fire extinguishers on the docks.
On all the docks? I don't know.
On all
Well,
the docks where there's
It'll be
boats.
subject to whatever what he decides.
Yeah.
I mean, you'll have to speak with the fire marshal about where the location is, right? He doesn't say.
Well, he says needs to be placed on the docks, so I would say if there's a boat there,
If the boat light's on fire and you
Yeah.
can't get into the boat.
yeah. Yeah, if the boat's, that's a very good point, Tim, thanks.
They have 64 wells? Does that
So-
mean every dock?
So 32 fire extinguishers.
Really?
Well, you have 32 docks?
That is not the case.
I have 32 docks.
32 docks, yeah.
So I'm not gonna speak for the fire marshal.
Right,
but
we're gonna have to check where.
In my experience, there's a certain distance that they have to be located apart, because I don't remember ever being to a marina and seeing one on every single dock, but that's for clarification from the fire
Okay,
marshal.
we'll say, his letter indicates placed on the docks, and he doesn't clarify, nor does he provide the statute or rule from where that comes. So, I'm going to encourage you to speak with the fire marshal directly.
Can you give me his information?
Oh, yeah, yeah. In fact, Sabrina, I'm gonna have Sabrina supply that to you. Fire marshal.
On Monday, when I'm back in the
Oh,
office.
that's right, you're on vacation this week. We will get you the information.
I mean, you can.
I'm
Google
sorry,
it.
did you say that was
There's
emailed to you
township
on the
fire
15th? Was that
Yeah,
emailed to
he
you?
sent an email directly to all of us.
Oh,
That's why I wasn't aware of
Tuesday.
it.
okay, yeah.
Sorry
yeah.
about that.
And, I mean, his next sentence says the fire department has no issue with approval of the property, so.
Yeah, yeah,
You just might wanna clarify with him where.
Okay.
It's not every dock.
it's not every day.
No.
Okay. Yeah, we'll have to get with, Mr. Shackett and have him be explicit in his letter. Okay, great. Okay, so now you have that information, we'll make sure you get a copy of this letter
Okay.
as well, okay. Okay, you have a copy of the code violation that was sent out June 13th, indicating the noted violation. The boats were on dry land and not permitted during the wet season. Chairs and tables not on the site plan. Dock material needs to be installed or removed from the property, and signs on your property are not permitted. This was from Kyle Kalick, our building code enforcement department.
All that was taken care of,
Okay,
except for we have one dock that we're gonna replace. It's there. And we're gonna replace the dock when our contractor is gonna, can be able to do that. So we've been waiting.
I did speak
Mostly-
directly with Brent from our building department, and he indicated that there were no current issues and that he was comfortable with the way the property presented.
Okay.
So, any questions from the commissioners regarding the violation letter?
So, I'm wondering if the no signage means temporary signage, like little yard signs that advertise
We'll
for,
have to get clarification.
cause I did drive by like just before the meeting, and I do see a couple of temporary,
There are
Yard
yard
signs.
signs,
yeah. So I'm sure those come and go.
right.
Other than that, I thought the property looked pretty clean.
Yeah, I saw pictures taken on Wednesday, and I agreed, it was very clean, so thank you for that.
Yes,
Yeah, the township appreciates
thank you.
clean property for sure. Okay. Any other questions or comments regarding the violation letter? Okay. Let's address the planner's letter dated August 11th. This is the third compliance review. You've come before us twice before, 2021, and I guess 2022. And at this time, we can decide to give you approval for 5 years through September 2025, but require an annual compliance review.
Madam Chair?
Yes, please.
This really, my memo just kind of gives the history of approvals. The original was in 2020.
There it is, September 22. I was looking for the 22 date, thank you.
And at that, the original approval was, in 2020. At that time, September 2020, at that time you granted 5-year approval but required an annual compliance review. You had the first compliance review was in 2021. You requested another compliance review a year later. That occurred in September 2022.
Yes, yes.
And then last year you requested, let's do another compliance review for 2023 before the end of August. And so that's why he's here this evening.
All right, before the wet season ends.
Technically, the original 5-year approval is good through September 2025. In theory, it expires in September 2025. If you wanted to continue the use, you'd have to come back and get another 5-year approval. You've kind of been doing this cadence of an annual review for this property. You have the right to do that if you wanted to request another annual review. You could do that at some point in 2024. And in the ordinance, it talks about what's the purpose of a compliance review. You may require compliance reviews on an annual basis or such other times after due notice for good cause. As part of a compliance review, you may revoke the special land use approval based on evidence that the structure or use is not properly maintained, has caused safety issues, or has become a nuisance either on or off the site with regard to circulation, light, noise, and other nuisance issues. So you could, in theory, revoke the special use. You could issue, or you could say that the compliance review is complete and then allow him to continue through until 2025 if you wanted to do that without another annual review, or you could complete the compliance review and request another annual review. So I guess you have 3 options.
Thank you. Questions from the commissioners? Questions from the applicant?
Oh, no. I don't have any questions.
So we can, go ahead. Oh, okay. Mr. Bradshaw? No? Okay, so we can make the decision this evening if we want to request a review next year, or let this go until September 2025, where we would make another decision. Personally, I like the idea of the annual review. It just sort of keeps everybody on track and
Right.
make sure that everything is.
It's the $600, the fee, that's,
Yeah,
that's the only thing.
Personally, I'd be in favor of pushing it out to the end of the
2025.
original, special use.
Really, that's only 2 years.
It is only 2 years, it's consistent with how, we've handled other cases. The applicant has shown through the past 2 years a willingness to comply whenever he's apprised of situations. He doesn't always realize them himself, but he does yet seem to be responsive when notified by code enforcement.
And code enforcement, a lot of the township drives by the property on a regular basis, so
Every
it's
day.
evident that it's either in or out.
And
So-
many of the others are fenced, and it's harder to see just driving by,
Right.
but are in the same situation.
Yeah, and this is a wide open space, yeah.
I would agree, I don't think our job is to be code enforcement, and it kind of feels a little bit like we're code enforcement right
Okay,
now.
so let this go back to where it belongs.
So by pushing out to 2 years though, to the end, the special land use, he has to reapply to extend beyond 2025, so I don't see the need for the review at the end, because he's gotta come back and reapply, so we would basically go through the procedure
whole
again.
That's what I'm saying.
Process we're
Yeah,
beginning
yeah.
to-
So you wouldn't ask for the review at the end, he would get a new review
No,
with his
he
new
has to
application.
reapply
Okay.
to continue his special use permit at that point, is
Now
what
the-
I understand.
The issues that were brought up this year, the trailers, the signs, again, I agree, we're not code enforcement, we should be policing, but, these items are, the trailers, the signs, these are not new, these have been recurring year after year. Now, I agree, the applicant does go ahead and clean those up when they're addressed, but they are recurring.
The only reason they're recurring is because we move boats. I mean, we have 8 boats that we rent out there, and sometimes they get damaged, a lot of props this year. So it's, so we actually take them out of the water right away and replace the props on them. And but we haven't had a trailer over there for a while to do that. But that would be the only reason we'd have a trailer there, for the season. And we don't like to keep trailers over there because we need parking space as much as possible.
Yeah, you really don't have a whole lot of spare room.
No.
No, and I understand that. I know before I've seen the pontoon trailer, because your rentals are pontoons. I know I went by Tuesday morning, and there was a regular V-hole boat trailer there that was removed by Tuesday, but that's not something that would have been used for the.
No, that was my boat, that was my trailer. I was just put it there until I moved it on Monday morning to get it out of there. And it was only there for like, maybe a week. If, most, it would be 2 weeks, but that's gone, so.
So, do we have a motion then, or any other comments regarding the violation and the planner's letter, and the comments from Brent? And the fire marshal? I guess I want to make sure, I want to make sure that the fire marshal's concerns are addressed. I think that's important. So can,
But I believe the fire marshal articulated that could just be addressed through the inspection process.
Yeah.
Yeah,
PC doesn't need to,
yeah,
I almost feel like it's been addressed because he's saying I still approve the property. I don't.
So-
He's not telling us to not approve it because he doesn't feel they're gonna comply.
and so you haven't been to the office all week, so you have a copy of this in your email that you would normally provide to the applicant, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so when you return to the office, you'll go ahead and forward that off to the
Yes.
applicant? And then can we count on you to
Follow
check
through
with
with that, yes.
Mr. Shackett?
Yes.
Okay.
Madam
Okay.
Chair,
Yes, sir, ma'am.
can I ask,
Please.
Adam, how a motion should be phrased to waive the compliance review next year and just go back to the normal process of special use permit
Yes, please.
renewal? Something like that.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. So what you're saying is that the compliance review is completed. The motion would be to complete the compliance review. We are not requiring a compliance review in 2024. And that's it. I think that's all that you have to say. the original approval is good through September 2025, but you don't have to say that, that's already
That's
done.
already-
It's implied.
It's implied.
Just as, while the applicant is here, he should know that he would need to, if he wants to continue the use after, beyond September 2025, he'll need to apply before the planning commission, or apply to the planning commission for another special land use for another 5 years, prior to September 2025.
With plenty of time.
Yep, yep. Suggest you start maybe beginning of the summer, or even in the spring of 2025 to make that application.
Right.
And does, and I'm just gonna defer to Sabrina for a moment. Does the township send up automatically, knowing that an end date is near? Or is it left completely to the applicant?
I send out a letter after the,
3 months in advance?
no, like next
60
week I'll send out a letter saying,
For-
I'll word it somehow saying you're good until September 25.
And then,
And it's on him.
and then it's up to him to, okay,
Comply.
okay. Okay, motion?
I would like to make a motion to complete this compliance review for case number 1923 CR Boat Town Marina and waive the requirement for review next year.
For
I'll support.
2024, okay. Motion by Danielle, Ms. Devlin, supported by Ms. Oparka. Any comments on the motion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye. Nay.
Nay? Thank you. You have your go-ahead, so you're approved for now, and we will see you in
Another year.
September 2025.
Got it, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Are you still required to comply with the codes of the township?
Oh, absolutely,
Yes,
without a
yes.
doubt.
Still be on it.
No public hearings or unfinished business, please?
Case number 11-23-SLU, Carol Sabo, property 17-12-15-330-004.
Requesting approval of the special land use for the property as a marine construction and storage yard. And we currently have before us the planner's notes, the planner's letter, a letter from Selfridge, and then additionally, a letter from Story Engineering addressing our site plan review and the 8 standards, and then a letter from our fire marshal, Mr. Shackett. Hi, how are you? So as the applicant is getting ready, Mr. Young, do you want to?
I can go through my letter.
Yep.
Okay, so I'm just pulling up the site plan on screen here. Okay, so this is a special land use and site plan request submitted by Carol Sabo, and for a marine contracting business. This is 32490 South River Road. They appeared before us, this was back in April of this year, for the public hearing. The public hearing was held, opened and closed in April, because it is a special land use request for the marine contracting use within the waterfront district. At that time, you may recall, the site plan was somewhat deficient. It had not been prepared by a professional engineer. They were asking maybe to have an exception to that rule. You did not allow that. This new site plan has been submitted. Has been prepared by a professional engineer. A lot more detail, a lot more information for us has been submitted, so thank you for the applicant for doing that. Back in April, just wanted to refresh your memory that the request was tabled ultimately for the following reasons. to give the applicant the opportunity to address some of the fire marshal's comments that he had made, to address the comments that I had made in my planner's review letter back in April, to allow the applicant to also address the fencing on an amended site plan that would clearly articulate what the temporary fencing solution would be and what the permanent fencing solution would be. There was discussion about whether they were going to do temporary fence for the time being, and then after maybe the road commission did construction, and they would do a permanent fence later, so just wanted more clarification about that. The planning commission wanted the applicant to address the sidewalk requirement. There is a requirement to provide sidewalk along the frontage of properties as they are developed. And the applicant wanted the applicant to address a clear demarcation of a loading zone on the site plan as well. So the revised site plan that has been submitted, I find is much improved. We've got a number of site plan sheets, including detail sheets, existing conditions sheets, demolition plan, detail sheets. Some of the key changes that are reflected on this revised site plan, there is a note that's been added that indicates the proposed hours of operation, 6 a.m. to 6 p.m., Monday through Saturday, closed on Sunday. Notes have been added with regard to required and proposed off-street parking. I think that was based on 5 employees, and they're providing 6 off-street parking spaces. You can kind of see them on this property here in this corner, with one ADA or one barrier-free parking space. These would actually be, according to the note, I believe striped, even though it is on the surface, they'll be maintained, restriped over time to maintain according to the site plan, the distinction between the spaces. They are showing that the existing 6-foot tall chain link fence with green screening fabric, the existing condition survey showed that it's a few feet into the road right of way, and so they're actually going to be relocating that according to the plan to the northern property line here. They also showed the required loading and unloading space, showed the location where this would be. They are showing 6 new arborvitae trees to be provided in the northwest corner of the site along the road frontage but behind the fence. They have added a note committing the owner to the ongoing maintenance of the landscaping. And you can see all of these kind of dashed lines. These are essentially areas with the notes indicating where they are going to be storing the materials and equipment and vehicles and cranes and whatever that's associated with this operation. And then to address the fire marshal's comments, to provide kind of clear zones or maneuvering lanes for maybe an emergency vehicle to be able to get in and around the different locations at the site here. The plan does show locations for 2 barges along the seawall. They also show a Knox box as required by the fire marshal. So there's just a few site plan comments that I would like to see, or that concerns or things that maybe require discussion yet. They're providing these arborvitae shrubs on the plan here, 6 of them, but they don't specify the height. Arborvitaes can be planted quite small, or they can be planted height. So in order for these to qualify as trees, and trees are required along the frontage, 6 of them at least, they need to be at least 6 to 8 feet tall planting. So we need the site plan to specify the height of these trees at planting. And I think it would be appropriate to require additional trees, maybe another 4 or 5 along the parking spaces from the northeastern corner of the site along the frontage as well. It just would make sense to do that. There is the question about the sidewalk. They are not showing a proposed sidewalk along the frontage. The ordinance does require a sidewalk to be provided for any new development, but it does give you, the planning commission, the authority to waive or modify that requirement where it's determined that the required sidewalk, in this case, would not serve a public purpose, based on existing conditions and pedestrian circulation needs at the site or in the vicinity. You said you wanted the sidewalk, or you wanted them to, I think you said you wanted the sidewalk in April. Their engineer did provide a response letter. They say that there's not adequate room to install a public sidewalk along the road frontage. And additionally, the engineer indicated that if a sidewalk were to be installed, it would not connect to any existing sidewalks to the east or west. So we need to discuss that issue. The third item here is they are proposing, what they call, you will see it in this location, a 30-yard roll-off dumpster to be provided at the site. There will be 3 bollards at the rear of the dumpster here. But otherwise, there's no screening, there's no gate, there's no concrete surfacing for a dumpster. The ordinance does require these additional upgrades for any trash storage enclosure or trash storage location, dumpster location on the site. So those are the 3 site plan comments that I have.
Thank you.
And then just remind you that as a special land use, you would also need to consider as normal the 8 standards for special land uses.
Thank you. So you have a copy of your representing?
Yes.
Okay. Why don't you go ahead and give us your name, please?
Tim Story with Story Engineering,
Okay.
and Carol is here as well.
Hi. So, okay, so you have a copy of the planner's letter then, yeah?
Yes.
Okay, great. Okay, commissioners, questions, comments regarding the planner's letter?
I would just note that I sent you guys the information on the bridge redesign after our meeting in April. I just was refreshing my
yes.
memory on that. There will be no pedestrian access added to that bridge.
So it's just gonna be a vehicle bridge only,
It'll be like
every other small,
bridge that we have in Harrison Township that people ride bikes over in the traffic lane.
when is that due to, when is that construction?
Oh,
due to
yes, I
start?
was going to also mention that construction is slated for 2024.
Okay,
I actually just saw that on the schedule yesterday, so.
so probably spring 2024? Okay, additionally, we have been provided with the letter from, I believe it's a comment from Selfridge, indicating the location of this property places it into consideration to be reviewed. But I believe it, I should have highlighted that. Oh, yes, it's in the wildlife hazard attractant perimeter, but since the property doesn't have any wildlife attracting elements, they didn't feel that it was an issue. And I believe one of your comments was that, the only other comment from Selfridge was the cranes, the height of cranes. And I think you indicated that your tallest crane, if it were to full extent, would be 40 feet, I think you said?
Yeah, and then you use the tool, the height at which it becomes a concern, I believe it was 260? We're way below.
Say that again?
The way they analyze it, the FAA, there's a slope that they look at from the end of the runway. I believe it's a 1% slope, but if you look at that slope from where we're at, it's like hundreds of feet in the air.
Oh, okay, I see
So
what you're saying.
we're totally
I
fine
see.
slope.
Okay, got it. Thank you. Okay, and then additionally, we have a letter from Fire Marshal Shackett, indicating that he conducted a review, and you have a copy of that dated August 3rd? Okay, great. You've corrected all deficiencies found in the previous review, with the exception of the Knox box. Okay, commissioners, any questions before we go forward?
I guess
Okay?
I had one question in terms of the plantings and maybe why they're not in the one spot. Is that because of the construction that's going to happen? I'm just trying to see where the construction is gonna happen in terms of what they're gonna use for the bridge construction before we go ahead and say, do this, and then you do it all, and then they come and tear it out.
Well, Carol and I have discussed, I mean, that project, as you mentioned, will be in next year. And these improvements, we really can't do until that's done.
Okay, that's what
One of the things I believe Carol told me was that they were kind enough to work with the road commission and allow them the ability to, reroute some of the traffic through the property. So there's really no real improvements that we would propose to do until after that project's done, then we,
That's what I wanted to make sure. Okay.
Yeah, wasn't there, discussion on whether or not the county was gonna be using the property as a storage area while they were performing some of the construction? I'm sorry, can you come forward, please? Just so that we,
They said that they're gonna put the construction equipment when we had talks with them, on the easement. So not necessarily on the property, because a lot of the property is gonna be for the road, and they're gonna put a temporary bridge. So midpoint of that piece of property is supposed to be road.
And your name, sir?
Scott Sabo.
That is some of the confusion I have with this. I guess, Adam, I have questions about, approving this now with this large construction project going on there. I just don't wanna waste their time and money if,
So maybe that's a question for the applicant as to when will this use officially start, or has it already
well,
started?
did he not indicate, because it's already started, and it's obviously been going on for a while.
So then I think maybe there needs to be some clarification on some of these improvements, namely the fence, the parking, and the landscaping, which
Yeah.
are directly in the way of, using that as a cut-through. So you would, I guess, need to make some decisions as far as the timing of when these improvements would need to be installed.
So if a motion was made and we clarified that these improvements wouldn't be required until after the Macomb County Road Commission's construction project?
within so many months.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, because they're anticipating the project's gonna take a year. So it'll start in spring, won't be done until the following year, so 2025.
and then I guess I have a question with how long is a site plan approval good for then, if we,
Right, so the site plan approval is good for 1 year.
Continue.
You have the ability to
Compliance
grant
for all
an
the-
extension. So that would, put us in 1 year from now. The construction will still be ongoing.
Can it be certain
But
items?
technically, I would say if you've approved it and they've established the use, then it hasn't expired. But you would just
Okay.
make sure to approve it with those conditions about the timing of certain improvements, the fence and the landscaping. To make sure that that does occur after construction is completed.
Well, there is one thing that I do want to talk about that will not be affected by the construction, and that's the hours of operation.
Me too.
Yeah, 6 AM to 6 PM. 6 PM I don't have a problem with, but 6 AM I have a problem with.
It's not consistent with the township noise ordinance, and it should be, in my opinion.
And because of its proximity, I mean, you're right in between two boat storage properties, but you're also right around the corner from residential. And we all know how noise carries over water. People, lawn care businesses can't start that early. Construction companies can't start that early in residential neighborhoods.
7 AM.
I think 7 in the summer, and then after
No,
Labor Day, it's 9. or
I think the code just says 7 AM,
Yeah,
but I just looked up, so.
yeah, so that
I don't know
that
if
is.
Sabrina can.
I don't know the codes, I'm sorry.
operation of sound devices shall not be before 7 AM or after 9 PM every day of the week.
And it doesn't, but it doesn't.
It is every day of the week. I thought there was a different restriction on
Oh, wait,
weekends.
That's,
I thought May to, Memorial Day to,
So I can cut my grass.
Memorial Day to Labor Day is what I thought the timeframe was.
I don't know if
One
it's
moment,
month,
Ms. Abel, one moment.
I don't know if it's months of the year, I don't know if it goes by season, I think it's just, I could be wrong, I'd have to look up the ordinance.
well, I'm not
Try
sure
and
I
look it
can
up, right?
see that detailed on my phone, but I believe
I'm not
also
sure
it's
why.
7 AM regardless.
That, I don't know.
Well, we can make that so,
Yeah, I mean, that seems reasonable.
yeah.
And, one thing I guess I'd like to mention is, in our upcoming, master plan review, I think we should talk about, in cases like this, maybe some screening on the lakeside.
Thank you.
Because, I mean, in this neighborhood, it's a fairly industrial neighborhood, like, all the screening at the roadside is just screening one property when the others don't necessarily have that.
Right.
But yet, if you look across the lake, then there's residential across the lake, there's other things that I feel like it should be screened from. So maybe when we look at the master plan, we could talk about screening from different zoning rather than on the road in an industrial location.
I agree.
Because for this, I mean, it almost makes no sense for
I
them to
would
put
love to
all
see-
this money into screening
Right.
at the road, and then on the other side where all, you know, the residential is, there's no screening.
And then get to see all the ugliness, yeah.
Or, not, I mean,
Well, you know what I mean,
not
it's-
that
it's not a-
industrial is ugly, but
No,
it's
but it's,
industrial.
right, it's industrial,
And
right.
it's not residential,
Right.
it's industrial.
It's construction material.
Comment on it, the problem is, the barges out there, they're loading steel, big pieces of steel onto those barges. Any type of fencing on the lakeside would just be,
They wouldn't be
it
able
would, it would
to
get tore up.
function.
I'm not
Not
necessarily
suggesting
fencing.
fencing
Right.
necessarily, but
Right.
other things. There's other forms
Yeah.
of screening.
There's.
If you're putting a lot of money in landscaping along the road, and I personally, in this case, would rather see, funds put into landscaping on the lakeside in such a way that would still allow you to perform your, operations, but yet would provide a level of screening from anybody on the lake, or living across the lake, or recreating, or enjoying tourism on the lake. I'm not saying that we should necessarily consider that for this case, but I think we owe it to ourselves and the community to take a look at that issue on the master plan. But since we're getting ready to revise
Let's
it,
put that on our workshop agenda for later today.
or next spring.
No, just to get it on, just to get it on record. Okay,
I mean, I also have concerns with like, why spend the money to put some arborvitae there? Are they gonna survive in that gravel
well,
lot?
it would take some
You know,
doing.
and they're going behind the fencing, correct, with,
And the equipment is taller than the arborvitae's. At least.
but
right
I don't
now.
know, do we have,
What was
We
the
have a
Can we
requirement in the ordinance
can
for
we
trees
even
along the
waive that?
frontage of new sites,
So what was the height of the fence along the front?
6 feet.
And it's gonna be screened?
It'll have I think the current, fabric screening.
So if you have a 6-foot tree behind a 6-foot fence,
Plus a foot of barbed wire, is that part of the 6 foot, or will that be 6 foot plus a row of barbed wire? Like there is now, there's barbed wire.
It'd be a 6-foot fence.
Okay.
I don't know anything about more.
Yeah, we don't have our land there. It's just a
It
cycle.
is there, it's there now.
So it would be, obviously, for the trees, they'll be planted at 6 feet, but they won't be much visible. Over time, if they remain healthy and grow.
don't get me wrong, I love
Eventually.
trees, but why do we
It's
have
a
the
requirement.
ability to waive that requirement in this instance?
Excellent, excellent.
Yeah, I mean, I know, you're right, the road's right there, so even,
if you're gonna speak, can you please come up to the podium? We can hear you, but it can't, it won't be picked up. Thank you.
All right, I'm just pulling up a visual of the property again.
So is that another requirement, like the sidewalk, that we're allowed to waive? Or is that something that's locked in?
Um,
No, I don't, but
I don't see the ability to waive
Okay.
that requirement.
Understood.
The minimum is 6, and that is what they're providing. Based on the width of their lot, they're required to have at least 6. And that's what
Yeah,
they're providing. As long as they're planted at least 6 feet tall, then they qualify as a tree.
Okay.
under the ordinance.
Respect to the arborvitae's, if they can't be waived, we could possibly move them to the other side. That would be, or split, do 3 and 3. But that's what's required. But one thing I wanted to mention was the time of operation. That was apparently just something that I threw out there. I don't know that they really don't start till 7 anyway, which is the township ordinance, so that's not a,
We'll have to verify with the
Yeah.
township ordinance.
Tim, did you want to go ahead and read that section or comment on that?
What section did you have?
So this is the.
And another thing I wanted to mention, very seldom do they work on Saturdays. I mean, it's very, very seldom. And never on Sunday.
Well, that's good to hear. Well, we don't want to declare if it gets approved 6 to 6, technically you could work every Saturday from 6 AM. And so we don't want
No,
that.
don't,
No, we
they,
don't want that.
7 would be the earliest, and most of the time, I would say it's closer to 8. And they're usually at the job site, not in the yard also.
Yep.
Number 12.
Yep, so you're correct. The section is 34-67 in the ordinance. And certain noises, horns and signal devices on vehicles, for example, are prohibited between the hours of 11 PM and 7 AM. So in that sense, a 7 AM to 6 PM hours of operation would be consistent with the noise ordinance.
So now the manual and mechanical construction equipment has a different time period of
I was
7,
just gonna say, do they have
7:30.
like?
It sounds like
yeah,
lawnmowers to me.
Lawnmowers and stuff like that. What time was that, Tim?
Manual and
Seven-
mechanical
7:30 in the
construction
morning.
equipment, yeah.
and not after 8 PM Monday through Saturday.
Yeah.
Sunday's 10 o'clock in the morning.
My neighbor needs to read that.
Sunday or legal holiday prior to 10 AM.
I would feel comfortable going with that,
Well, I also want to
7:30?
because
base
it's
any,
mechanical equipment that's being used out there.
I also want to base any decision that we make based off the use, not on the current contractor that's renting the property.
Correct.
So regardless of what their current hours of operation are, any other contractor could move in there, and that would change.
Yeah.
So I want
Yeah.
a decision based on a use.
Big, you know,
And
goes with-
consistent with the township ordinance.
Yes.
Yeah, goes with
Yeah, I
property.
just would suggest that, as opposed to us to trying to re-articulate the dates, the times, the uses, that the applicant would just be advised that their hours of operation have to be consistent with the Harrison Township noise ordinance, right?
Agreed.
That way, then we don't have to
Right.
get hung up with all the
Yeah,
different variables
yep,
that exist
And that's
within that.
perfect. That is absolutely perfect.
so the hours of operation are 7:30? That confirmed? Whatever, let's put it this way, whatever it is, we'll change the plan to match that, that's not.
I guess it depends on operation. If there's employees there and they're not operating machinery, I mean, that's
Right,
something
that's one
different.
thing,
But as long
right.
as they apply, you know,
Follow the
follow
township
the township
ordinance,
ordinance
yeah,
on noise and
yeah.
are not starting equipment.
yeah.
Right.
So I guess hours of operation really doesn't concern me as long as they're
Yeah.
following the ordinance.
Hours of operation is
Noise
defined in the township ordinance. And just for reference, that was 34-67, number 12.
You should probably just say 34-67. Keep it at that.
Okay,
Because
all right.
there's some other ones, like the horns and signal devices.
Ah, so that encompasses everything, got it.
Yeah, so it's some slightly different
Okay.
timeframes. So I think to Mr. Botch's point, let's let the ordinance regulate it.
All right, okay, I like that idea. Okay, so how do we want to address the start? well, first, let's back up. Do we have any questions for the applicant regarding the site plan as it's presented and the comments that were made by the planner relative to the sidewalk and the dumpster? Let's go ahead and finish up those two items.
So my personal feeling on the sidewalk is that it's not necessary. Based on what Amanda told us and what she provided us information about the bridge that's gonna be constructed next door and the surrounding properties, it would be a sidewalk to nowhere, so.
Sidewalk to death, it sounds like.
Yeah.
Yes, So I don't really see that,
For the length of just that property, since the two properties on either side are
it ends in a
lacking.
bridge. And
Yeah,
then,
yeah.
It's unfortunate, but
It's a
our
total
road
missed
department
opportunity.
in Township didn't feel it necessary
Yeah.
to include pedestrian access
A missed
to the
opportunity.
park at the end of the street.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'd want to hear his responses to the other two before making a decision on that, though.
The planner or the applicant?
The applicant,
The
all
applicant.
three.
Well, yep, and I think you did address the sidewalk in your comments. Do you want to share your comments with us now, though, regarding the sidewalk?
Sure. Well, would you like me to read it, or?
And the shrubs and the dumpster.
Yeah, let's go one for one. So let's go ahead and finish up the sidewalk. So, we understand the property has some limitations, regarding placement of the sidewalk, and especially with regard to the, impending construction of the bridge, reconstruction of the bridge. And in the past, we have foregone our township requirement, in some cases where it just doesn't make sense to put that in right now, or at all. And I believe you addressed that in your letter to us.
Right, for the same there's no sidewalks either
Right.
side. There's really no room to put it there. There's a guardrail. I don't know what it's gonna look like once the new road is built, but like I said, there's no plans for any pedestrian access over the bridge from the county. I know sometimes that can be contentious a little bit with the county. They don't particularly care for sidewalks. So, but if there's no access over the bridge, then there's really no reason for a sidewalk.
I mean, it will have the 4-foot wide pad or 2-foot wide pad that like they have on Jefferson or on
The
new
shoulder.
bridges, but it's not technically a pedestrian. People will use it.
And
for
people will
that.
use it for that, but it's not dedicated for that.
Yeah,
Or wide enough as
wide
per.
enough, yeah.
Yeah,
and I don't think they can
not the bike
arrange the
path.
sidewalk in a way to connect to that, because
No,
that would promote.
no, cause there's not like, no curbing.
okay, so, and I think I'm gonna move on to the dumpster, and then we're gonna come back to the arborvitae's. Because the placing of the arborvitae's is dependent upon, the approval and/or construction, as, what's the point of planting beautiful trees if they're just gonna get torn up, right? So let's talk about the roll-off dumpster. You've got an 8 by 21 foot dumpster planned. You've got bollards on the rear side to keep it from ending up in the little canal there. Do you have any plans to screen that dumpster on 3 sides as required by our ordinance?
Well, our thoughts were that the green fabric and the landscaping across the front serve as a screen. They're 6 feet high. And looking at a metal dumpster versus other metal sheds and equipment and everything that's on the property, it doesn't seem that anybody's even gonna notice a dumpster sitting there. I didn't even know there was one there the first time I was there. So they had to point it out to me.
Okay, I
And
see your point.
and then there's
It-
other
it's not in
dumpsters in
compliance
the
with our
area
ordinance.
along that roadway that don't have enclosures, so. But we felt that it would be screened by the fence with the fabric. And then that's why I was actually thinking if we could, if we have to do the arborvitae's, if we move those to the east, to the east side, then that combination of the arborvitae's and the fabric on the fence should screen the trash enclosure. I don't think anybody's ever notice it on property.
I don't think you can use greenery for dumpster enclosures.
Yeah,
Correct,
so
it's
the
gotta be-
ordinance,
We don't,
whether
Yeah.
we agree with its effectiveness at this location or not, it's not a modifiable standard.
No, we've had other instances, for example, Leslie Tire, their parking lot's fenced, and we still require them to do an enclosure around their dumpster.
Yep.
Other marinas, we've
Yes.
required
Eddie's,
a
Eddie's
dumpster.
Drive-In, we
And
did
it's-
the same thing.
If there are other ones around it that are exposed, that's a enforcement issue.
It is,
not-
right, that's not anything
I
that we can,
wouldn't be
right.
comfortable approving a site plan in violation of
I
an
agree.
ordinance.
I agree. And not only that, but having it fenced on the back and on the street side, that's two sides, and we require three sides on, around the dumpster.
It requires a
So-
concrete pad to be.
That's
located
right,
on.
and a concrete pad, for the dumpster to sit on.
The one point here is that it appears that location may be another conflict with the road commission project. So that would be another improvement that would have to wait until after the construction is done.
I'm viewing almost all these improvements as being, taking place after the construction.
I just wanted to
Right,
make sure
yeah.
that we brought that up.
I agree with you on that, because I think,
All right, this
don't think
is,
they know
who
what it-
knows if it
yeah.
only takes a year
And they don't know
a half.
exactly what they're gonna come in there and move around and, so.
Would it
And I
be,
believe last time they said that Huron Point Excavating would be vacating the property during construction. Yeah.
okay, so, let's just throw that question out there then. Will the excavating company be vacating the property during construction of the bridge?
conversations
Oh,
at the
wait,
same
okay.
time? What did you ask?
It was indicated in April, when you first came before us, that the excavating company would be vacating the property, not performing their activities
During
during
the-
construction
during
of the
cons-
bridge. Is
Believe
that
that's
still going to
Yes,
happen?
they were told that they have to move because
I'm sorry,
of
can
this-
you come to the, can,
Oh, excuse me. Yes, they were told that they will have to move because the road is gonna go right through the middle of that property. So everything that they have has to be relocated.
so will there be any activity on that property during construction of the bridge? Essentially, that business is moving elsewhere?
Right.
I'm still more concerned about the use than the tenant.
I get that, but
Well-
I'm concerned about what the property is gonna look like after the road commission comes
Right.
through. I mean, it may look completely different than it looks now.
Right, but we're allowing a
Like,
special.
yeah, do you guys have an agreement on?
We're allowing a special land use.
Yeah.
So as you indicate, our task is to approve or not approve the special land use, not specifically for this, but this does fall into the special land use. So even if we cut that off and say regardless of what the activity is on the property, if it's not occurring during the construction, then when the activity begins again following construction, these are the rules that
Yes.
we're approving. So, yes, so I think it encompasses both of your concerns.
But doesn't it help the applicant to know, if in their negotiations with the Department of Roads, what those would be? Cause then if they have some agreement to do restoration, if they know what the standard to restore is, that might be helpful.
That was
And so
kinda
we-
what I was getting at, that, like, I don't know if I could suggest that, but if it was me, I would be saying, you're using my property, do all these things for me that they required.
Yeah, the county's gonna be required to put the property back to its original condition or better, so I don't think that should be an issue. However, Carol mentioned, we had a discussion before the meeting, actually, the only reason there's a dumpster there is because Huron Point is, it's easier for them to have a dumpster on site. So if we do not have a dumpster, then there's no requirement for an enclosure, correct? Because we don't even have a building. So if we don't have a dumpster, so what we're looking at is having Huron Point not have a dumpster there, and then we wouldn't need an enclosure.
So no, the ordinance requires trash receptacles for all uses other than single and two-family residential.
to be encompassed,
So
three
even
sides.
if they don't use one, they do need an enclosure
Yeah.
for one.
Yeah, if there's a dumpster on the property.
'Cause again, maybe
Oh,
if you're on
And even
point
if
with the
even-
contractor,
there's not a
may not
dumpster.
need
Even if
one.
there's not a dumpster.
Right.
Okay.
Maybe the current user may not need one, but the
Marine
Location of
contracting.
the
contracting business
planned,
needs one.
The use needs one.
The use needs one.
okay, dumpster location requires that.
I wanna poke at something that Mr. Mulder was chasing down. And I likewise am not getting too hung up with who the tenant is, it's what is the special land use, and let's think about what the words here are, though, and perhaps I'm splitting hairs, but, so we are looking at this potential project to provide a special land use to use the property as a, quote, marine construction storage yard, unquote. So that's what we're granting. Now, it could be Lake Point Excavating, it could be any other contractor, but the key to it here is, it's only a contractor that does marine construction storage, so it cannot be approved. I'm not suggesting it is, but I just want to kind of get my arms around something, because it's gonna go someplace else yet. It's not gonna be used, according to the special land use, for a marine boat repair. Right? Because that's not a marine construction storage yard.
Right, I think boat repair is a different listing.
Right,
In the
so
law
I mean, it's
license.
clearly limited to a marine contractor, not a residential contractor that wants to use it for something, and now here comes the fun part, or a road builder that wants to use it
That's
for a storage
what
yard,
I'm trying to get at,
because
is
that's not a marine contractor.
we're gonna approve this for marine contracting, and then that use is vacated for a year.
Yeah, and
Or more.
a road builder comes in and uses it as their storage staging, which we haven't approved.
But if we're approving it for that activity, regardless of when that activity takes place, then they would be in compliance with whatever approval we.
After the county and their contractor.
Well, so up until, and then minus the time the construction takes place, and then beginning again following that.
Understand that, I'm just, I said, I don't want to get hung up on the words, because the words clearly say marine contractor.
Yeah,
And that's not gonna be who's gonna be doing the bridge.
right.
So this whole change of the property to have a road, I mean, who reviews that? Shouldn't that be?
That falls all under the county purview. For right now,
I mean,
I
they're not-
currently
I
have
don't
across the
think
street
they're
from me, a
immune.
bridge going through residential
I mean, they're
property
working with
because
the township.
they needed to put a temporary one.
The township worked with them on that plan, didn't ask for
But
the
that,
sidewalk.
I mean, I think that plan should come before the planning commission.
I'm not sure the legal, who has jurisdiction there. I know there is some language. There are some court cases about county buildings, being exempt from local zoning. I don't know if this would be construed as a, what building or what the courts interpreted the word building to mean. Is that a facility? Is that a use or
A
operation?
temporary use,
I'm not sure.
that
You know,
could be
we
harmful.
see this kind of thing all the time with road construction projects, but usually it's within their own right of way. I've never been in a community where I've had a request from a, MDOT
And they
or
did it
road
out by you
commission.
guys.
They were outside the road right away through residential
All
property without
over out
any,
there.
Without
I mean,
any-
the
It's the
township,
same kind of
the
repair.
residents whose property was affected, and the county worked that out, and it
And so
never.
township did not have that.
And this is, I mean,
That's not
there's
changing the
safety
use.
issues with the bridge
No, but it's-
as it stands right
I
now.
don't think we have any purview over how the county for a temporary project comes in and does that.
I
And
guess
there's
I
safety
disagree.
issues with the bridge as it exists. I mean, there's
I mean, yeah, for sure, but I mean,
traffic cones on it saying,
It's currently one lane because
Yes.
it's not structurally safe for two vehicles to cross.
My thought is that, again, the reason that they're here before us is because they
that's undisputed.
started a use without securing approval. They'd like for that use to continue to operate until the construction begins. That's why they're here.
Right,
Um,
so it's our
I
job to
think
make,
you could, knowing that it's going to cease for a period of time for this one project, but then the applicant is asking for the use to continue after that project is done, that I think it's within your purview to be able to say, we recognize that that will happen, and that the marine contracting use can be allowed until that happens and beyond, and after the construction is complete, that's when we will require the improvements.
And any negotiation between the Department of Roads and any applicant that's out of our purview. But we can say, if you put a dumpster on the property, or there's a dumpster on the property, it's gotta be on a concrete pad.
Correct.
Period.
And the
If
use
you have a
requires
dumpster on the property, it's gotta be screened on 3 sides.
And the use requires a dumpster to be on property.
Right, so that's a requirement.
So I think that was a very interesting way of approaching it without us getting too deep into the weeds of the phasing and the logistics and everything that has to occur to make this happen. Because what I thought I heard there, was a really good solution to just fundamentally saying, before we get hung up, with when does the dumpster occur, when do the
Yeah,
trees occur?
doesn't
It's
matter.
just gonna be, we are gonna, if we choose that it's appropriate, if this board deems it appropriate to grant the special land use, it's just gonna, the words are gonna be referenced in there that, that the proposed site plan will not need, and I'm not gonna see these exact words, I'm just trying to go for a concept, that the proposed site plan does not need to be applicable or enforced until after the construction of the bridge. And therefore, you know what? As things are occurring, we don't have to get hung up saying the trees gotta go first day and just bam. Because what you basically said is, we just give them that temporary use for the construction of the bridge. And they come in and do whatever they're gonna do there, but then after they leave, then the application of this site plan becomes enforceable. Now, there's a time thing that you said that we have to address, because whatever you approve is only good for a year, so we would still, to the same words, would have to think about how do you tie phasing and timing.
That's what I say, we'd have to discuss the time frame after the completion of the bridge, if they have to bring it up to the site plan.
Right,
Yeah.
right, and I don't think you'd wanna get hung up with accepting the potential that it's a one-year project on a bridge, because that could be anything.
And that could change.
Right.
Right now, it's slated for spring of '24, you say?
So we just set the date of
24 construction. year.
whenever the construction's completed, then we give them a time frame to
Yeah.
bring it up.
Yeah, that seems like it kinda keeps everybody in a nice, safe place that
Yeah.
can be managed.
The only problem is if the construction is delayed through '24, and we're looking at '25, then we're a whole nother year out of compliance.
Well, Tim suggested a compliance review, perhaps,
Similar to what Boat Town is.
like next
Yeah.
year. Then they could come back and apprise us of the status of when they anticipate to be operating again as the special use, and update their site plan at that time with
That's kind of
anything
a nice
that
idea.
is dependent, as
Sort of
Tim
keeps
said.
everybody.
Can we have a compliance review
keeps everybody
before
in,
they're
intact.
required to have it up to
Yeah.
the site plan?
Well, I don't know if, would a compliance review be necessary? We all would know if the construction project is on or,
Yeah.
delayed. I think you'd be okay with whenever the end date of that construction is, and then give them a date after that by which they need to make the improvements, whether it's 3 months or 6 months or whatever you want.
But it comes back to
Well, the
not
reason-
knowing what the property's
Yeah.
gonna look like, cause is the approach to the bridge gonna affect the right of way there at all? And then do those parking spots move, and,
Well, as they've indicated, the county would be, as part of the negotiation, the county will be responsible for restoring the site to its previous or better condition. Actually, the applicant probably benefits in the sense that, well, their fence is gonna be relocated. They're gonna have to remove the fence by the county, and the county's gonna put it in the right spot, not in the wrong spot,
Yeah.
which is where it is right now.
Which I'm sure the property will be resurveyed for
that's what
the
I mean.
establishment
Property
of
could look so much
better.
better after this.
Yeah.
Right.
So if the.
I hope so.
If the construction
If we
project
sell it,
affects
then it's-
anything on the site plan where it's not feasible because of the completed bridge, would they have to come back with a new updated site plan?
I don't see how that would occur because it's their property. It's not like they can take,
Anything within the road
Or
right
property,
away, as
you
long
know.
as they're
Right.
outside the right of way.
so I don't see any problem with approving this
Okay.
plan because it will be restored and, unless the county, for some reason, has to purchase some of their property, then I guess
Yeah.
we could deal with it then, I
Okay.
suppose, but.
And I guess that's why I like the compliance review idea or suggestion, just because, things in almost 2 years could change. So, but I guess if we're reviewing, it's not gonna look the same as it does today.
the area on the property would stay the same, like I said, as, you know, they'd have to put it back to original condition or better. They have a road project that's approved, funded, ready to go, and they have not requested any easements for anything, or said they had to, you know, build something onto the property to build the bridge, so my assumption would be that they're not going to need that, because otherwise they would have already came to Carol and asked for that, because they already have their funding, the design is done, you know, so that's not part of the project.
As is, or better. As is.
I'd say that, as interesting as it is with the compliance review, I think what I heard Adam say, I think still gives the township proper protection, because, if this board finds that the site plan as drawn, or as drawn with contingencies is acceptable, and if anything happens between now and then, because of, logistics on the site or approach that the county's got, the site plan's gonna change. Here we go again, right? I mean, so I think we would have that protection, that if there's anything that happens, we're gonna see it again. Unless it's so minor that I guess tech team feels that it's such a insignificant change that tech team can handle it.
Well, there's enough activity. I mean, how many times do you drive by there? Twice a day, right? Minimum.
No,
He
just,
turns
just,
before.
Oh,
just
yes.
west.
Yep. Yeah. Okay, all right, so, okay, what do you wanna do?
I have two questions still for Adam. One is regarding the, showing the barges and locations. Do we have any, or does the township have any purview once it's in the water? Are we strictly looking at the property? Does that even matter?
I believe our jurisdiction ends there.
So, really,
On the
it
water.
doesn't mean anything of those being on there. I have noticed a barge sometimes being kept in that canal, basically obstructing any passage through there. But if this isn't part of the site plan, it doesn't really mean, because we don't have any purview over that, right? The other thing, as far as what's included in the site plan, is it also includes the property to the north. Now, the application only is for the southern property, but yet we are showing the northern property, which is a separate parcel ID, and improvements there, and I am uncomfortable approving a site plan that has changes to a property that's not even on the application.
Yeah, so, it's a good point, and the reason why they added this northern side is, if you recall, back in April, we talked, they had, their idea for parking was to, we'll use parking on this site. And so they went and showed this site on the site plan. As it turns out, they're providing the required parking, 5 spaces, on this site, and so it's unnecessary. What they're showing here, except for just a couple of things, is all kind of just demarcating, kind of for our benefit. Hey, here's how many parking spaces are on here, on this piece of property, because we had asked the question in April, so I think they kind of were showing us what's the situation here. The only actual improvements on this site, I believe, is a barrier-free sign, and they do say that they were going to provide blue striping for this ADA space, which is great. They're bringing their site into compliance to do that. That is not even anything that I think we need to even look at. I think they're just able to do that. So I would just say, I have no problem with these 2 very minor improvements shown here, on this particular piece of property, because we did bring it up and we are discussing it in April. But technically, I think as far as we're concerned, we don't have to worry about this northern site.
So it being shown on there, and us approve, if we approve or deny
Right.
site plan, it does not affect that property at all, because they're
Correct.
2 separate parcel IDs.
Correct. Your approval is for this parcel ID, this one right here. It does not include the northern parcel.
Because that's my concern in April, was they are 2 separate parcels. Now,
That's
while they are
correct.
tied together by the same owner right now, that at any time could
Presently.
change.
That could
So,
change,
Absolutely.
unless there's something legally binding those
Right.
together, I don't have.
So once
I'm
again,
not
we're back to
comfortable,
your
yeah.
point about
Yeah.
sticking to the property,
Yes.
not the application, but the property.
And that's why I personally was pleased to see that they're providing their own self-contained parking on this site for this use, as opposed to having to do some sort of an easement on the other property to the north.
Okay, so that being said, do we want to address the arborvitae's at this point? The landscaping? Do we want to address the issues that are on the site plan that are required for the approval, regardless of activity, regardless of when things are gonna change or not change?
I mean, at a minimum, I'd like to know that they're 6 or 8 feet tall, they're meeting the ordinance requirement.
Yep, I agree.
We can't waive it, so.
And how many more does our ordinance require?
They are providing the minimum required 6. My comment was show that, indicate the height, maybe be at least 6 feet. I had suggested, well, if you're gonna put, trees on this side, why not have them on this side as well? That was
Yeah.
just a suggestion, not an ordinance requirement. Or maybe they could split the difference and put 3 and 3. Maybe your approval can simply say 6 total arborvitae trees at 6 feet in height at least, along the frontage, and leave it up to them to decide the best placement of those.
Yeah, I feel as long as they're meeting the requirement of 6 foot tall, the minimum required is 6 required, they're more than 6 feet apart.
Yeah, and this is all of this
Really up to them
brush.
to decide where they're gonna place them.
Yeah, because this is all going away for the bridge construction.
Yeah.
So that site is essentially gonna be probably completely vacated.
Adam, your note here
Yeah.
without me looking it up, it just says that, requires arborvitae trees to be 6 to 8 feet. Is it actually gives that
Between
very?
6 and 8 feet.
Right, so this board could have elected to say we want 8 feet and still be consistent with the ordinance.
Now, I think, well, as a special land use, you could ask for 8. I think the ordinance gives a range because when you're purchasing plants, it's hard to get it exactly. So we're basically saying that they need to be between that range as minimum.
Which I understood, I was just
Yeah.
seeing, so I saw the variable, I said I'll pick the higher side.
Yeah.
Since the ordinance is only to dictate minimum requirements, not necessarily
That's true.
expectations.
You have the ability to do that, and I think because of the special land use.
Right, just as you were saying, even though the ordinance only required 6, maybe it'd be nice to add 4 more to the, I mean, we have that ability to do that as part of the PC.
Well, it sure would be nicer looking along the roadside to have the symmetry. Who knows if the driveway's even gonna be in the same location as it is today following the construction, but, the symmetry sure would be nice. I don't know if the 8 feet, I know our emerald arborvitae's grow an average of 6 to 8 inches every year. So it's likely that they could be 8 feet in, 3 years. But 8 feet do require maintenance.
I do think the applicant already said they were comfortable spreading them out on the
Stretching them
front.
out across the front, okay? All right, so 6 trees, roadside, minimum 6 foot, preferably 8 foot, 6 to 8 range. However specific you wanna be about that, Mr. Batchel.
Or
Spread
anybody,
evenly
I was
across
just
the
poking
frontage.
at that we have the right if we want it.
Yeah,
Because when you say 6 to 8, you know what you get.
yeah,
right?
6, barely,
For a year.
for a year,
Right.
yeah. All right, sidewalk. No space for one. Sidewalk to nowhere, or sidewalk to somewhere eventually.
I'd just say that I've been convinced that the requirement for a sidewalk on this site probably would be excessive, given all the adjacent constraints that exist.
Okay.
I agree with that also. I know we always talk about, we have to start somewhere, but I don't see this ever really being feasible.
Okay, so potentially waiving the sidewalk restriction, or, ordinance. Not waiving any discussion regarding dumpster.
So I'd like to hear the applicant's feelings on that, because based on the use they're required,
Sidewalk or dumpster?
the dumpster,
Okay.
you know, they had talked about not, you know, removing the dumpster, and telling the current tenant that they can't have one, but the use requires it, so I wanna know if the site plan, if they'd be willing to update the site plan to include that according to all the ordinance requirements.
So you understand, that's the ordinance, and
Yeah.
that's a requirement, it's not a, well, I don't think it should be there, it needs to be there, that's the requirement.
Right, it's required because we're making improvements to the property. The ordinance says that it's required for this use regardless of whether you
Regardless.
need a dumpster.
Right.
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 Well, we
So,
would probably,
concrete pad on 3 sides, a concrete pad and
Right.
screened 3
Yep.
sides. And then also, I believe the gate, there's a gate requirement, a steel gate requirement on the front.
well, I think a wood gate's
Yeah, wood.
Wood.
adequate, yeah.
And that's
Yep.
the site plan requires like a cross-section view structurally of.
Oh,
the
steel
entire
framed
enclosure.
wood facing, got it, yep, that's what I meant, yep.
So a couple things. One is if we do it, what we would probably do is make it smaller, because I don't think he needs that large of a dumpster. We could do a standard size dumpster and cut the price in half. So that's one thing we would probably do. The other thing is it an option to us to go for a variance on that, or no? Maybe you could, but you wouldn't get it approved, or what would be the
I,
thoughts on that?
yeah,
Not a use variance.
It's a dimensional variance, you would have the right to ask, but the justification, as you know, I'm sure, has to do with the uniqueness of the property and a practical difficulty. So it'd be probably a tough demonstration, a tough thing to demonstrate, but you have the right to ask. And that, doesn't really.
right, that doesn't
matter,
change,
you
right,
know.
doesn't change anything on our approval,
Right.
right?
And yes, you could have a smaller, the minimum size of the waste receptacle base is 9 by 6. So you could save a lot of money by not providing an accommodation for the 30-yard roll-off, which
Yeah.
is much larger.
There are much smaller dumpsters that
Yeah.
have that.
Okay, so dumpsters required, cement pads required, enclosed on 3 sides, with a steel frame wood facing gate is required. Sidewalk, I think we're in agreement that could be waived. Arborvitae's, minimum of 6, with a minimum of 6 to 8 feet in height, placement determined by the applicant. Any other issues that you want to bring up?
We have not gone over the 8
Yeah, that's
standards.
what I was just gonna
That's
say.
next on the list.
Okay.
Okay, do you want to go ahead and,
No, it's.
bang it out? Okay, number 1, proposed use shall be of such location, size, and character that it will be in harmony with the appropriate and orderly development of the surrounding neighborhood and applicable regulations of the zoning district in which it is to be located. Yes, yes, no, yes. It's between 2 boat storage facilities. That location on South River is, that is conducive to a lot of the surrounding areas. It is adjacent to residential. We see that. So do we feel it meets 1? I would say in general, yes.
I'm conflicted. I do believe that, you know, directly adjacent properties, yes, but it is in close proximity to residential,
Yeah.
and, you know, we addressed, there's no sound barrier there. It's
No.
wide open
Yeah.
across the water to the residential.
Exactly.
But there are a lot of similar uses on that stretch of South River.
There are,
And there's a lot of residential
there's
also
marinas and boat
mixed,
storage, and there is residential mixed in.
And
here's
boat
the township.
repair and, so I would feel comfortable saying yes.
I'll tell you what, we live out in Clinton River, and these boats that come down there with open headers, 454s, I mean, they're making loud noise. These guys with these big boats, big stereos, blasting them down the river, constant all summer long. trust me, it's not any more noise out there from these guys than stuff that's happening every day down.
True, but our job is to take a look at this piece of property in this location in proximity to its surrounding residential and community spaces, so. But I hear you, I understand.
And whether or not they're doing that legally is an
Yeah,
enforcement
that's
issue.
out of our purview, yeah. Okay, number 2, the proposed use shall be of nature that will make vehicular and pedestrian traffic no more hazardous than is normal to the district involved, taking into consideration vehicular turning movements and so on. Not really a space for pedestrian traffic, except during special holiday events towards the end of the point, right?
I'm more concerned about the vehicular traffic. There's a gate, I would assume with the materials being brought in and out of here, there's probably gonna be semi-trucks, and that is a narrow road and tight space to be getting in and out of that property. I'm a little concerned about vehicular traffic obstruction.
So they've got a 26-foot gate plan, 26-foot sliding gate, certainly wide enough to accommodate a tractor trailer. Once it's in the property, it's up to them to have space to maneuver,
Yes,
but at least enough room to pull in,
it's the coming and going.
coming and going. Okay. Proximity in relationship to intersections, adequacy of site, distance, location, and access to off-street parking, and provision for pedestrian traffic.
Keep in mind, we are moving the fence back, so that actually gives them more room than there's there right now for, maneuvering in and out. Because the fence is gonna get moved in about 3 feet, so it gives them more room, in the road right away to maneuver.
Number 3, the proposed use shall be designed as to location, size, intensity, site layout, and periods of operation for any such proposed use to eliminate any possible nuisance emanating therefrom, from which might be noxious or to the occupants of any of the nearby uses permitted, whether by reason of dust, noise, fumes, vibration, smoke, and lights. Well, I think we've established lights are not gonna be an issue since the operation is not evening, therefore no evening lights are gonna be on the property polluting the surrounding community, correct?
Correct.
I believe there is a current light on the property right now on
And I think that's
the
a
utility pole.
Roadside? Yeah,
There's one on a utility pole, yeah, that we don't know.
yeah, right there. I think it's right there. And so, noise, fumes, vibration, and smoke, dust. We've talked about the hours of operation being skinnied down to 7 or 7:30, depending on what the ordinance states, for mechanical equipment, till 6 PM. No excessive fumes or vibration, smoke. And I'm not sure that any of that is, I don't know if any of that is part of your current business.
No, I mean, I don't know if they do any outside, there's some welding that they do, but
Well, marine, if we keep it to, like Mr. Batcha said, marine boat storage,
Marine
I mean,
contracting.
thank you.
is Different.
yeah.
They're loading stuff
Loading
on
and
the
unloading.
barge and taking it out,
Mm-hmm.
bringing stuff back and taking it off.
So that's a question.
But they're going to abide by our noise ordinance.
So
And I
compliance
mean,
issue?
at the last meeting, when there were residents here, nobody was mentioning fumes or
It was mostly
smoke
noise.
or dust.
Yeah.
It was mostly noise was the complaint.
Noise and view.
Noise and view. Number 4, the proposed use shall be such that the proposed location and height of the buildings or structures and location, nature, and height of walls, fences, and landscaping will not interfere or discourage the appropriate development or use of adjacent land and buildings, or unreasonably affect their value. I think the key statement in that paragraph is unreasonably affect the value. I don't think there's anything that's gonna be ridiculously high. The structures are really temporary structures in this case. the barges and the equipment, not permanent to the site, but transient in their use.
Yeah, the only permanent structure would be a dumpster enclosure. Everything
Dumpster
else
enclosure, right,
is
right,
temporary.
right, coming and going and, okay. Number 5, the proposed use shall relate harmoniously with the physical and economic aspects of the adjacent land uses in regard to prevailing shopping habits, convenience of access by prospective patrons, continuity of development, and need for particular services and facilities in specific areas of the township. It's smack in between two boat storage, across the street from boat storage,
I mean, I think it's a
Fox
use,
Manufacturing. See,
I think it's a use that's needed in the township.
say,
I think the use is needed in the township.
Okay.
I think a lot of people use, here I'm going.
we are a boat town,
But, you know what I mean?
so
That
conducive to
people
the area.
need those services
Yes.
here
Mhm.
to do whatever they do.
Anything to the contrary on that? Number 6, the sorry?
So one thing on the site plan, this outdoor storage of the heavy equipment is right along the shore, basically, or the seawall. So I mean, I guess, that something we should discuss? Like maybe if the equipment were stored further back on the property, that might make it, I don't know, I just thought maybe, I mean,
Closer
what-
to the road or further away from the
yeah, I mean, we
residential?
haven't really talked about the site plan and where they're actually storing stuff on the site plan. And that area right there says surface storage areas for heavy equipment, trailers, skid steer, trucks, probably an excavator that I saw in the picture. You know, and then other materials also stored right there. So I'm just thinking maybe we should discuss if that's an issue.
How,
I mean,
okay,
the whole
'Cause outdoor
property
storage
is storage.
The loading, unloading space will be open. We left the middle open so that that's for access to come in.
middle from the road or middle from the lake?
Middle from the road, right, come into the gate, you know, that kind of middle portion of the property, you know, trying to leave open, maneuvering vehicles, they can turn around and stuff. So I think there's about 10, 12 feet from the seawall to where that's shown, that on the west side, those boxes. Equipment. And then
I
because of the
get
shape of the
what you're
property, it gets a
saying,
little
yeah.
narrower to.
But it looks like everywhere is outdoor storage, so would we
yeah.
rather have the power tools or the seawalls stored closer versus the heavy
Steel
equipment?
sheeting and the
Yeah.
pipes and the pilings and the grading.
But two sides are waterfront, and I asked that last time if there's any environmental restrictions with the use that close to the water. I don't think we could, at least I couldn't find any. I I totally agree
Well,
with what you're saying.
Yeah, there's a requirement of how they store oil and
Yes.
things like that, petroleum, I mean, there's requirements on how that's stored, but as long as the equipment isn't leaking petroleum.
And I don't know if, I mean, we see here, the property is open to the water. It's open to,
And the canal.
right, to the residential that's there. I don't know if loading and unloading steel, anything, to a barge here would make a difference. Here, if it were loaded here, would make a difference if it was loaded here. I'm not sure if that sound emanating from that activity, I'm not sure if the placement, and I'm not even sure if we can dictate that.
Well, we can dictate where its surface storage is on the site plan, I just wanted to bring it up,
You know,
just in case, we hadn't, nobody had talked about that, at least that I heard, so I just wanted to make sure that.
and it kind of makes it
everybody's
where it's located would be where the activity is, right? I mean, if that's where it's located, that's where you're gonna go after it, that's where you're gonna put it back. Yeah,
Yep, it's not a
Okay.
very big site, actually.
so that's your number, that's your, so that's really kind of three, actually, as well. 3, 4, and 5. Okay, Number 6, the proposed use will service a public convenience at the proposed location. That's what you were hitting on, Amanda. I think it's conducive to the area. Public convenience, I guess. Could it be
And 5.
located someplace else? Yeah, probably.
5, need for particular services. Number 5.
I mean, yeah, if we're replacing seawalls, it makes sense to have this close by.
7, proposed use is so designated, located, planned, and operated so that the public health, safety, and welfare will be protected. Well, it's not in the public way, it's not, I think I would say yes. Anything to the contrary? Number 8, the proposed use shall not cause substantial injury to the value of other property in the vicinity in which it is to be located and will not be detrimental to existing and/or other permitted land uses within the zoning district. Substantial injury to the value of other property. Anyone?
I know we did have residents last time, during the public hearing, voice their concern from the residential area nearby.
Within view.
Now, whether or not they can show substantial injury to the value is debatable.
Well, there is a house for sale
And I mean,
right now,
does this permitted
this
use
house right here.
allow, I mean, improve the property value for the boat storage yard next to it to be also marine contracting for it? It's tricky, cause there's a lot of uses
Yes.
in that area, and talking about property value.
Well, in order for us to approve this, it has to meet all 8. So, let's go back and address a couple of the issues that we were iffy on. I think we're comfortable with 1, 2, 3. This falls into, Ken, what you were saying, residents were complaining. Amanda, Danielle, what you were saying, nuisance. The proposed use shall be designed as to the location, size, intensity, site, layout, and periods of operation of any such proposed use to eliminate any possible nuisance emanating therefrom. Anything that's outside of that becomes an ordinance issue, an enforcement issue, I'm sorry. Yea or nay on 3? Number 4, proposed use shall be such the proposed location and height, appropriate development, adjacent land and buildings, unreasonably affecting their value. It's there now, it's been there for a while. Is it any majorly different than the boat storage areas that are coming and going? I don't know. I don't know how to answer that.
I mean, I would say yes, the boat storage doesn't have daily traffic that a construction site would.
And outdoor storage of construction materials.
So potential on 4. And potential on 3. And I know we're not supposed to be getting hung up on this particular application, but let me just ask. It was mentioned in April that the operation was run in such a way that employees would come, they would load their barges, so a lot of activity in the morning, the barges would go out, do their thing, barges would come back at night, or not. but loading and unloading majorly happened in the morning hours and in the evening hours.
Correct.
Not necessarily during the day, or could be occurring during the day. I mean, do I have that right?
I think the neighbor's issue.
One thing I
is-
want to mention is that they don't have deliveries every day, though.
Say that?
They don't have deliveries every day. They only have deliveries infrequently.
Ms. Sabo?
I would say that they probably have deliveries maybe once a week, once every 2 weeks. And mostly, once they load the barge and they take the barge onto the site, I really don't see them that much. So as far as the activity in the yard, it usually is in the morning, but they don't come back at night usually, they don't come back usually until they finish the job.
So not a consistent unloading every night,
No,
but could be a consistent loading in the mornings on a regular basis? Or is it that you load that barge, you take it out to a job, you work that job for 2 weeks? So there's what, no activity for that time frame? And I'm not even sure if we need to get this deep into,
Well, my concern is we're basing it on the tenant again, because
Yeah.
he may be taking a barge to a site, but another marine contractor could come in there and be building docks and fabricating
Yeah.
them all day long on that site. Again,
Yeah.
it goes back to the use,
so
not
the
the
activity,
tenant.
yeah, exactly, yeah.
I'll make a couple comments. The seawall guys don't really fabricate anything. Most of the stuff they brought is either steel pilings, wood pilings, and sheet material, right? So they buy in advance for a job. They bring it on a truck probably once every week, maybe once every 2 weeks. They load the stuff on the property. When they need it, they load the barge. Usually those barges take off. They're gone for 2, sometimes 3 weeks on a project before they even come back to even get material delivered to them. It's not everyday activity. I go out there, I hardly see them in the yard. If they are, they're probably more in the morning. But it's not like all day long they're out there. It's maybe a couple hours, you know, and if it's maybe 2 or 3 times a week that they're actually on that property. Other than that, it's really storage for their equipment. Most of the equipment, the excavators, end up on those barges because they need them to pound the sheeting and stuff. Most of that stuff doesn't even stay on the property. It's just there when they need to load the stuff, right? So,
But we're evaluating this in the use, and the current contractor could go out of business or not return after the construction project, and another contractor could come in there. So
Yeah.
regardless of how this current contractor operates, we're looking at the use in general of any contractor that could come in there and how they could possibly operate.
no, yeah, no, I understand that. You know.
And so, but it is good to know that at least under this,
Yes.
this condition, at least we've got something to start with, so.
I mean, in general, I'd say that most of those contractors are gonna operate somewhat similar, you know, where they're mainly off-site.
Well, I think
It's
that-
gonna be mainly a storage yard.
And I think, Amanda, your point was, and maybe Ken as well, in our public hearing, in April, the noise was the issue. The noise was the biggest issue, I think. And if that's gonna be starting at 7:30 and going for 2 hours, you know, that can be,
But you know, there was talk about vibrations. We're right across the road. You guys, we'll run the machines out. You guys wanna come out there? We'll get instruments. You're not gonna feel it. Where the one guy that was complaining, we kinda know where his house at. There's no way you're gonna feel it that far away. There's no way. I can't even feel it across the road when they're running around. As far as those machines, they're fairly new. So they meet environmental, you know, specs on the motors and stuff. So exhaust coming out of them are up to the latest environmental specs for that equipment. So there might be some diesel fumes. When I'm over there, I hardly ever smell it, and we get a southerly wind too, so that blows over to our property. So, I don't know. That's subjective, it really is.
yeah, I guess that's a good way of putting it.
So could I ask a question about the outdoor storage again, Adam? So, I see that there is a 15 15-foot rear yard building setback along the seawall. But yet these outdoor storage areas are designated like specific dimensions to them. Couldn't those be required to be pushed back out of the setback?
If you'd like to, add that as a condition of approval.
I mean, would
I mean,
that?
it's not a building, obviously.
not a
the outdoor
requirement.
Right,
storage is
it's not a building, but, I mean, that setback is there to kind of protect that area. So would that help? Does anybody else think that that might help to kind of mitigate that whole view shed issue of storage of contracting and construction materials right at the seawall? If it were 15 foot back, it could still potentially be used for everything that it needs to be. But yet, if it has to be stored there for a long period of time, it wouldn't be stored right at Lakeside. And I'm not even sure if that's a feasible thing or if that makes any difference to anybody else. But to me, it seems like that might help a little bit.
If you move that back, then it reduces our maneuvering aisles. The one there is 20 feet. If you move that up 5 feet, now it's only 15. You know, that's a negative.
Well, I don't think you suggested that the maneuvering aisles wouldn't be impacted by that. It's just
Right.
the placement of the storage.
There-
Just the storage.
There's a maneuvering aisle right here. If you slide this up, this is gonna get smaller. That's set up for two-way traffic. Same, it'd be worse over here. This is only, you know, move this up, now I don't have 26 feet here for the parking and where the dumpster's at, so, you know.
But that's the maneuvering aisle. She's talking about the stuff on the sides. Right?
So the line is about here.
Mm-hmm.
Right, but those boxes that are, they're not gonna get smaller, so if I have to move them north, it's gonna reduce the drive aisles on either side. Move this up, it's gonna make this get smaller, it's gonna make this get smaller, and you no longer have the two-way traffic.
So, to your point, the waterfront district, minimum yard setback from established fill or bulkhead line for buildings and other uses, except as provided in this paragraph, shall be 15 linear feet. No building or use, including off-street parking, except covered boat well, slips or berth, shall be less than 15 feet from the water's edge. So it's saying a use should
Seems
be
like
within
that's
15
this.
feet.
Right?
And granted, this is from a year ago.
And are these dimensions only taken into account here in points needs?
I mean, if the dumpster's
not
gonna be
relative to us.
smaller,
Right.
that takes care of that. Maybe there's one less parking space for storage equipment, but I mean, it seems like that, what Ken just read, this would not be in compliance with that then.
Right. That's what it sounds like.
What section is that, Ken?
Waterfront.
Section 14.19 waterfront district.
If the applicant were to offer some screening like you recommended at the beginning of this conversation, Danielle, would that
But then we'd
change
have to-
your
we'd have-
opinion?
We would have to be limited on waterfront screening is.
That's why I went to this.
Yeah.
This section was, as soon as we started talking about screening and, you know, around the waterfront, because we've been through that with
Yeah,
other properties.
I think we have a limit of 3 feet, and it's not gonna, on the waterfront, isn't that our limit, 2.5, 3 feet?
Is that in residential?
It is in resident, there's other requirements, so for commercial,
Commercial.
we required restaurants and marinas, you know, they had fences, but we required them to be see-through. To, stop, you know, to allow the view.
I mean, I don't think that we should be approving a site plan with storage in the setback area, especially based on what you just read.
Adam?
That's also 15 feet, it says from the water's edge, so not only does that apply to the south, but there's a water's edge to the east, where the parking space is in that whole section to the east, where the dumpster would be located. To me, that applies to both sides of the property.
So here it's showing 4.2 feet between the edge and the canal. 5 feet on the other side, the west side, between the property line and the storage. And I scribbled over my numbers. I can't see what those are. So are we interpreting that explanation correctly? That there should be 15 feet between the property edge and any structure on the property, whether it be storage and/or a building?
Well, I think you have to go to the use, I guess. It doesn't say storage. It says buildings and
Building.
it says both.
Structure and use. it says.
Structure and use.
Yeah.
Um, you could argue the whole property is a use versus the storage. I don't know if, I don't know if I would interpret that necessarily. Maybe you use, as part of your power to attach reasonable conditions to the operation is where you would say the 15-foot rule along the water.
And,
You know,
and aesthetically, that might provide
right.
a barrier, but
I don't-
visually, I don't think it would change much.
You're still gonna see it,
Excuse me.
sure.
It does specifically call out parking, off-street parking.
Mm.
That's in parentheses after use, it's just kind of giving examples.
So off-street parking is included,
Yes.
so there's one space out of the canal, yeah.
Crud.
They're providing 6 when they, 4, 5 are required, they could just eliminate that space, is probably what they would end up doing, and then shifting this over 2 feet, to comply with that.
And then the dumpster becomes a permanent, is that considered a building, or would that just be under use?
Well, you put a concrete pad down, that makes it a
Yeah,
permanent,
That's permanent.
permanent location. So that needs to be 15 feet as well.
The dumpster could be west. Be fine.
But, I mean,
I find that the 15-foot requirement and expectation is actually pretty interesting. But I think to Adam's point, without debating it too deep in my mind, I was like, what's the difference from the water if the sheet piling is 6 feet from the water or 15 feet? I'm not, to your point, I'm not sure it really changes the
Yeah.
dynamic
doesn't change
of
the
what
view.
we're trying to conceal. Like, if we were able to pull off, which I know there was debate about, like, landscaping the whole waterfront, check mark, right? But then operationally, it doesn't work, right? But I guess every one of us can think about, because it's a fair point, it's a very fair point about, it does say 15 feet, it does smell like it used to me. But on the other hand, I'm looking at it thinking like, well, with no disrespect, this is a marine construction site, there's nothing really pretty about it.
But it's not just materials, it's trailers, skid steer, trucks. We've just done compliance review on, this kind of, much less of an intense.
Right, no, I understand, it's an
And it
interesting
does say
argument to
trucks.
make.
And the
Off-street
use
parking.
to the canal side, it's just boat storage, so to me, I'm not that concerned about that 15-foot buffer there,
On the side, you mean?
yeah.
Yeah,
Because.
I agree.
Personally, I don't think looking at a bunch of boats covered in wrap is appealing either, so.
And if it is deemed 15 feet, that would be a variance requirement then. The applicant would need to seek a variance for that. I mean, that's not something we can say yea or nay on without a variance.
Right, yeah, I don't, clearly the ordinance says off-street parking, and then when you add that, factor in the canal, although I suspect that they could address that issue without having to go to the ZBA, they can eliminate a parking space or just shift it over. I think that would clearly apply to the dumpster location as well. They said they could shift that over. The ordinance does not say storage, and this is a marine construction and storage use.
Right,
The entire site is the use.
right,
Doesn't make sense to me to require 15
right,
feet
I agree.
for the marine construction and storage use to
Okay.
occur.
So,
I would say let's keep to what the ordinance
parking and
specifically
dumpster
says, the parking
specifically,
and dumpster.
but nothing
And
else.
off-street parking.
Yeah, off-street parking
Yeah,
and
parking
dumpster
and
is what
dumpster,
it
yeah.
clearly says.
They're parking trucks here, so.
But I do wanna say, I personally don't see what it would accomplish, but you do have the authority to require, or add conditions. So if you felt that you wanted the storage to comply with the 15 feet, I think you could add that as a condition, what I'm saying. I don't believe that that's a specific ordinance requirement. So no variance would be needed for that.
So I wasn't around when the waterfront district was being created and the thoughts behind the setbacks. So I can't speak to the intent, but it definitely seems like that has been applied in previous commercial instances. Since it's on the books even, it's not even a site plan, you know,
And certainly
based
not
on the
here.
site sort of thing. It's like actually written, so forth.
What's been applied?
The language in the zoning ordinance for waterfront.
Sure, yeah,
I
absolutely.
mean, I wasn't around when that was created, so I'm not clear on the intent on that, but it seems just from the reading of it, that that would be the intent, that
Yeah,
uses,
Harrison
parking,
Township.
such as parking, dumpsters, potentially storage wouldn't be right at the waterfront. I mean, I get that there's going to be those kind of uses on this site, consistent with the other uses on this street. But, I think that the ordinance is, you know, it's kind of given us guidance and direction in this point. It's not just,
I appreciate the discussion, and I appreciate the thought. I think under this condition, I mean, this use, if I stick to just this use, not this applicant, but just this use, I think I'm just in agreement with the planner. Off-street parking and dumpster location, and any building. So where does that put us on where does that put us on our list? And it doesn't really fall into number 7. Number 5, I think our issues are 3, 4, and 5.
Yeah, to me, that would fall under 4. Buildings or structures and location.
You wanna talk about that a little bit?
I think we've discussed it pretty in depth. That's 2, 3, and 4 are the ones I'm struggling with. I know we have to meet all 8.
And I'm 3, 4, and 5. I can even get past 8.
Yeah, I think, to me, 8's a pretty hard case to make with the surrounding uses.
But it's Bowtown, it's Harrison Township. We are such a mixed community. I mean, we're a mixed bag to begin with. How do we you know, how do you rectify?
By adding a setback, no, did I say that out loud?
Go for it.
Just kidding, just making a joke. Probably not the best time.
Anything you can impart to help us get past,
So looking at number 3, I think they're talking about the potential nuisances of this use. I think we talked about how they can be controlled through enforcement and other codes such as the noise ordinance and other performance standards that we have. So I think our ordinance protects us in that regard from the noises and nuisances. Maybe that's number 3.
so let me just ask a quick question there while we're at 3. So are we in a bad place if we approve something that automatically becomes an enforcement issue?
Well, you don't know that it would become an enforcement issue. You have the rules on the books that talk about the different activities between the periods of time.
So we have a reasonable expectation that the
Right.
rules will be followed?
Yes.
Okay. Number 4?
Number 4. So you're looking at, again, the use, the character of it, height of buildings, there are no buildings here, the structures and location, there really are no structures. Certainly the storage is the biggest component of the use, the equipment storage, the machinery, to ensure that that will not interfere with or discourage the appropriate development and use of adjacent land and buildings or unreasonably affect their value. And I think number 4 and 5 are really kind of talking about the same thing here, harmonious with the physical and economic aspects of the adjacent land uses. Prevailing shopping habits, convenience of access, continuing development. So, you know, in looking at this site, it's clearly it's a marina-related use. It's listed as a permissible special land use. It is not directly adjacent to any residential uses. I think that's a big indicator. The master plan shows this as a waterfront district. You can expect that there are going to be some, you know, related waterfront uses, and this is somewhat more intensive than maybe just straight boat storage.
But it falls into,
I can't speak to what exactly is in the area. Mostly it's boat storage, but there are marinas. I think there's a boat repair across the street, I think.
There's
Some
a
sort
min-
of-
I believe marine salvage,
Salvage.
it may be up for sale, so I don't know what the continued use would be there.
I don't think that it is out of line necessarily with the adjacent uses.
number 8, substantial injury to the value of other property in the vicinity.
Right.
I-
And it would be detrimental to existing or other permitted land uses within the zoning district. In the sense, it's, you know,
It's allowed,
it's allowed.
it's allowed.
Would it be detrimental? I mean, there is traffic involved with this use, but any use it's not preventing, or it's not, I don't see that it would cause excessive detriment, you know. It wouldn't preclude anyone from using their property for a permitted purpose necessarily.
Okay,
So
that helps.
that led me, going through that one, led me to a legal question for number 1. And that is, orderly development of the surrounding neighborhood and the fact that, and applicable regulations to the zoning district in which it's to be located. And the fact that, this site's been operating for at least a few years outside of compliance with the regulations and the zoning in this district. Now, legally, do we consider the past when considering this, or is it strictly as presented in this application?
I've always suggested that you can't look at the history of, you know, enforcement is a different issue. it's a different department or jurisdiction, let's say. Even things, you know, people say, well, they didn't pay their taxes or something like that, or, you know. You've got the use at hand is what you would look at, not necessarily the owner or past history or violation. You look at, is this use appropriate?
Okay,
I concur with that, you're looking at the application before you.
okay, thank you.
So I don't have a problem with the use per se, and I get that it's consistent with other uses, but I'm not going to personally approve a site plan that is in violation of the zoning ordinance. And further, permitted outside storage of boats and equipment necessary and accessory to the principal use shall comply with the following conditions. All storage or parking shall meet the principal setback requirements. So permitted outside storage of boats and equipment necessary and accessory to the principal use, marine contracting, shall comply with storage and parking shall meet the principal setback requirements. So it seems to me pretty clear. So, I think that's what's holding me up from my vote, but I'm just one commissioner. So
Tell me
I
what
would
that-
like to see that setback maintained as per the zoning ordinance.
Is that 1419?
Yeah.
So there is room to move some stuff around, but I won't be able to maintain that open area in the middle if I have to move stuff past the setback. So I think it can be done. But we have to revise the site, we have to revise the site plan for those other two issues anyway, so we can revise it for that as well.
And that's, I think getting, on the current site plan, with some of the
Issues that we
perceived
brought up.
deficiencies that we're looking at. I think the detail that's involved, again, it looks more as to the current tenant's use rather than saying permanent items like the dumpster and the parking spaces, the rest of it is just the general use. The detail, I mean, if another contractor moved in there, they may not lay it out the same way. But I would, at this point, prefer to see just the general setback, saying no operation or storage or use within this area. Without, you know, obviously you need the loading zone, the parking spaces, the dumpster, the rest of it is just general to the use.
Yeah.
Is it-
Yeah. Or like
agree.
more generic, like storage here.
Yeah, I don't need to know that the skid steer is going to be exactly where on the property, just that it's not going to be in the parking, at the dumpster, in front of the dumpster, or in the setback area. So it could be more general, I think is what Commissioner Mulder's saying.
Although its use will be in the setback area during use, because it'll be used to be loading and
But
unloading.
it's not
and
stored there.
Not stored there.
And that's specifically addressed.
Okay, so do we want to make a list of the issues? So where do we want to go with this? So clearly, there's issues that need to be addressed on an updated site plan. We've addressed the 8 standards. Are we in agreement that we're past the 8 standards? Are we in agreement that we're comfortable with the 8 standards enough to say, we're gonna request this applicant to move forward, provide us with an updated site plan on the items that we will mention? Is that where we're going?
I think so.
Yeah,
Okay.
I believe so.
All right. Okay, all right, let's talk about the items then, let's get them on. So the items from the planner's letter, the items number 1, 2, and 3,
But we're waiving the sidewalk.
I personally agree with waiving the sidewalk.
waiving the sidewalk? Yeah,
I do.
I'm
Do
in
we have to
agreement with
vote
that as well.
separately, or can that just be part of the
I think we could
eventual?
probably say that that's.
Yeah, I'm just saying, she's saying addressing.
Yeah.
Right, just don't make it a contingency to.
Right,
Yes.
right.
Gotcha.
So, okay, so we're gonna ask this applicant to come back with a new site plan. They've already agreed to the number 1, the minimum 6 shrubs between 6 and 8 feet tall, placed on the property to on the roadside, as per the ordinance. Sidewalk, I think we're all in agreement that we could waive that.
Just on the site plan to note
On
where
the
zoning
site
trees
plan.
to note the specific height at planning.
Yeah, oh yeah, that's right, thank you, add, that's what the requirement was, right, add height to site plan, okay. And then the dumpster, must be listed, with a concrete pad and a surround on 3 sides with a gate to follow the ordinance. The 15-foot setback should be maintained or shown on the site plan as maintained. The Knox box, that's already indicated, I believe. And I think those are the only 3 issues. Oh, the hours of operation, to follow the ordinance, which is not 6 to 6, but, I think 7 to 7:30, 7:30 to 6.
There's restrictions for holidays and Sundays. I would just say follow
Follow the ordinance, okay,
Yeah, because
Yep.
it could change in the
Yeah.
future too.
yeah. Okay, anything else?
That's all I can remember. That's all I can remember.
Okay.
Well, and then there was, which needed to be, a narrative to be addressed was the phasing and sequencing of this acceptance.
Oh, yeah.
And when it was gonna be, expected that the actual compliance occur. To that, then do you have any recommendations, Adam, on after completion of the bridge, what would be deemed a reasonable period of time?
Does that need to be part of our motion at this point?
Yeah.
I mean,
I think it does, because that's how we, because otherwise it's only good for a year, and we
Yeah.
know it's gonna be past a year before.
Well, I guess it depends on what our motion is.
True.
Yes.
True, but let me get, do you have do you have a thought to what an acceptable duration would be after completion of the bridge, and we can decide if we want to leverage it or not, then I guess.
Probably a question for the applicant. Because if the construction ends, let's say, right before the winter season,
I was
they're
gonna
not gonna be
say.
able to plant trees. So maybe 6 months gives them a half a year,
Yeah.
enough to withstand a season, so they could plant in the spring if it happens to end in, construction ends in November. At least they have until May.
Do like 6 months, weather permitting, then,
just
I
like
think,
6
yeah,
months period.
I mean,
months.
this year you could plant it any time this summer.
Yeah.
But
And not in the spring.
not in spring, it was a drought in spring. I was thinking that like the 6 months makes sense, even, if the project takes maybe a year and a half, then they still could plant that fall. And they could plant in May, like Adam said, if it ended in November.
If your motion is to table, you can simply say due to the reasons stated during the meeting. I think it could be simple.
Say that
If
again?
your motion is to table, I think you can simply say for the reasons stated, for the revisions stated during the meeting. If you're looking for, if you wanted to actually make a contingent approval, then you'd need to list these out. I've been kind of taking notes for a contingent approval, but I don't know if you're, maybe you're looking to table. If that's the case, then I think it's a simple motion for the reasons stated. You'd want to see those things that, on a revised plan, essentially.
I think I'd like to see a revised plan. That's just me.
This is the first time we've seen an actual site plan in detail.
Yeah, I'd like to see a site plan.
Agree, just given, one of the reasons stated was to manage the 15-foot setback, and that has a pretty significant impact on the site plan. That would be one that would be tough to make contingent, in my opinion.
Yeah. And then that means Fire Marshal Shackett will have to do a re-review, which I would appreciate, so.
Yeah.
Okay, so new site plan. So,
I think you've clearly stated what you want to see.
what the items are,
Yes.
okay.
So I will make a motion to table case 11-23 SLU, to give the applicant time to revise the site plan based on the discussions this evening, and not including the sidewalk that I don't believe we deem necessary for this location.
Support?
Motion by Mr. Mulder, supported by Mr. Batcha?
Yes.
To table this case to allow for a revised site plan, indicating a waiving of the sidewalk, but to also include the other items that we discussed in detail this evening. Any discussion on the motion?
Do we need to set a date on, because I know this one got drawn out for a little bit, do we need to set a date on when it will return after tabling?
Should we make this date specific?
Sabrina, when would they have to present the materials, for next month?
It's 2 weeks ahead of time when it's a revised plan. 2 weeks ahead of the next meeting.
So I'll ask the applicant, do you think that gives you enough time to revise the site plan?
I believe the meeting is
Yeah, when's the
September 21st? Is that right?
Is it
21st?
late?
21st of September.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'll amend the motion, to table it till September, I'm sorry, you said
21st,
21st, the meeting,
next PC meeting.
regular scheduled meeting, September 21st.
And I amend my support.
Thank you. Any other discussion on the motion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. So you understand?
Yes. Can I get clarifying, even an email from Adam, making sure that I got everything covered?
I'd be glad to coordinate with you, absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. All right. Comments from the planner?
We had a tech team meeting on the 9th of this month. We had 4 cases that we looked at. One was in the industrial district, 41355 Production Drive. It was for installation of a CO2 tank to the rear behind the building. This is for a marijuana grow facility. That application was approved. We had one discussion-only item. This is from somebody who's looking at the 9 adjacent lots on the east side of Jefferson Avenue, just south of South River. You can kind of picture that area. There's kind of a row of kind of vacant properties there. It's zoned B1 district. That's our village district. I wanted to share this with you just because I think it's important for you to hear. They were looking at doing residential builds at that location.
How far down South River?
Just
Oh, thank
basically
you.
third property in from South River along Jefferson there, and then there's kind of a row of undeveloped properties there.
Was that the same one that proposed kind of those garage
Car
minimums or
condo,
whatever?
kind
Yeah.
of barn, whatever you want to call them. This is a different entity.
Oh, thank you, yeah.
So what we're seeing is that it doesn't seem like there's interest for retail, for commercial, for office, so people are looking to get creative. In this case, they were looking at single-family residential as an option. It could be allowed as a special land use, but it means that they'd have to come back for each lot would need its own special land use request for a single-family home. So they were thinking, well, maybe we could just rezone it to a residential district. Master plan shows it as V1, so anyway, it's a discussion only. They're gonna think about it, so you might see that.
Okay.
So really, the rezoning would just have them avoid having to pay 6 different application fees for the special land use request, so it'd be residential either way, the way you look at it, anyway. So that property is certainly being looked at, but so far, nobody's looking to do what the V1A explicitly would like to see. You know, service, retail, office, that kind of a thing. The third case was Conger Bay. I forget the name of the marina, but at the very tip.
Lucas Marina,
Lucas
the old
Marina.
Lucas Marina.
Somebody had put up a deck pavilion area. One of the slip owners actually put up a structure there without pulling the permit.
Oh, that's not good.
It's too close to the waterfront. It's within 15 feet from the waterfront, so we had to deny that request. And then the last one was in the industrial district and accessory building. In the industrial district, that one was approved. So 4 cases. And the other thing I wanted to mention is that we just this week finally received our signed contract from Eagle for the master plan update. The grant is now in hand. The money has been allocated and approved by the federal government and the state government.
I had a question on that, Adam, because I also got my agreement at work,
Okay.
and they told me I have 10 months and that's it. Did they
So-
tell you the same thing?
Fun times, right? So they delayed the even though they said retroactively, you could get reimbursed for activities starting July 1st, but they never told us you can
Yeah,
actually
until
start working
now,
July
yes.
1st until now. So, yeah, they did not extend the deadline, so June 30th is the deadline to complete the project.
Yeah,
So,
that's what I was nervous
we're gonna have
about
to
when
work
you
pretty
said
quick.
that to me.
Okay.
Because it was special funding and
Yeah, yeah.
they were like, we can absolutely not extend this past our fiscal year.
So we're gonna have to work, fast, and with that said, we'll need to, maybe give some thought, to see if you'd be willing to maybe serve on a subcommittee that doesn't meet during regular monthly meetings, but maybe we have to have almost every 2 weeks, if you can do Zoom or something like
Yeah,
that.
step it up for,
And we'll have a standing meeting every 2 weeks, and we'll meet as necessary or whatever, just to be able to move this along.
Yeah, I kinda
We
like
have
that
to for
idea.
the-
I think that,
And to take it
It's a
away
great
from this
idea.
formal
Yeah,
planning commission
I
structure,
like
but
that
to an
idea, yeah.
informal, kind of meeting structure.
Yep.
So give some thought to your willingness to serve on a committee like that, or whatever.
Can any of the discussion be done electronically through email, or is basically everything involved with this have to be open, public, and be?
So, as long as it's not a quorum, you can do kind of informal meetings, and you're not making any decisions, right? They're work groups, right? They're
Yeah.
study sessions.
Data
You're not making a
collection,
decision about the master plan. Ultimately, the committee, everything we do is gonna come to the planning commission where a formal decision is made. So in my experience, for a master plan, you can have work sessions as long as, and you don't have to have those open to the public necessarily, they're just internal meetings, as long as you don't have a formal quorum of any body, public body.
and I mean, we have built into the plan to do public
Yes.
outreach and public
Yes.
input.
So
And
there will be an opportunity
Yes.
for, public engagement.
I remember that
For
from
these
last time,
internal
yeah.
meetings, it's truly just an internal meeting to keep the project moving forward. Yeah. So, we're gonna have to move, so.
All right.
You will be, but this is exciting news. We're
That's very
glad-
exciting. I can't believe it's been 10 years?
Yeah, 10 years.
10 years.
More than that, since the
Jeez.
plan was last done.
It's a 2011, I think.
13.
Crazy.
12.
10,
It's been a long time.
2010.
Yeah.
2010. so
Holy
13
cow, that's a long time. Anything else?
Well, I think because we passed our deadline, we're not gonna have our workshop, but just give some thought. All I was really gonna do with the workshop was just kinda introduce the issues. And the issues were thinking about the waterfront district, can residential be allowed? We've gotten multiple requests recently that we've had to say no. For people who are thinking creative about redevelopment within the waterfront district and maybe incorporating some residential use in the waterfront district. Not a single-family home, which is allowed as a
Right.
special land use in the waterfront, but think of a mixed use. Upper level, we had one, proposal for upper level, kind of loft apartments above a marina use. It was a really cool looking, concept that they had. But it wouldn't be allowed, and so we had to think creative about a planned unit development and that kind of thing. But the other issue number 2 is in Harrison Township, as we know, you have that 5-acre minimum.
Right, percentages.
That even qualifies for a PUD, and I do kind of feel that the author of that PUD language stole it from a community that's a rural township.
Right, right,
And didn't
right.
factor in the fact that we want to redevelop small properties just as
We're a
much as
mixed
we want to
bag.
redevelop large properties.
I mean,
And we want
yeah.
unique development on small properties. And then the third issue is that 25% minimum open space for the PUD as a qualifying factor.
I mean, it just
If
makes
you've got a
sense.
40-acre parcel,
Yeah,
no big deal.
no big deal, right.
But if you want to try and maximize your development
Yeah.
on a 1-acre parcel,
Yeah.
maybe some other form of open space, maybe active open space that isn't 25%.
Or
of the lot.
just an adjusted according to the size of the property.
Right,
I mean,
so
then, a staggered.
That's what we were gonna talk about. I didn't bring any language to you.
That's what I was gonna ask, if you've just kind of roughly made a draft that we can
No.
bounce ideas off of, or?
But I could
okay.
share it with you, if you're, amenable to that. I mean, if I'm seeing nodding heads.
I think so.
What about the idea of potentially allowing like residential within a mixed-use building in the waterfront?
Yeah, I think so.
Good.
I
It's
think
not
that's,
the primary use,
Good.
maybe.
Yeah.
The waterfront is a very diverse,
Yes.
the waterfront district is very diverse, so.
and I thought we we did, but only in that Jefferson, L'Anse Cruz area, yeah.
Right, we did in the
Yeah.
Jefferson proper. In
Yeah.
that waterfront district, we're allowing it, yeah. So, great. I can start putting language on paper for you to
That'd be great,
consider. So
yeah.
there's our workshop.
Okay, cool, thanks, that was quick. Okay, comments from the floor? Mr. Bardo? Nothing? Okay. Thank you. Our next meeting is September 21st, 2023. May I have a motion to adjourn, please?
So moved. Support.
Ms. Devlin, supported by Ms. Oparka. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.